before Mario jumped, before the world tried to catch them all, before the glow of a screen held a family together. There was a different Nintendo. It lived in the shadows of old Japan. It existed in a time of woodpaper and ink. This story begins not with a bang, but with a whisper. It starts in a quiet shop on a narrow street in Kyoto. The year was 1889. The air smelled of old wood and wet stone. The lanterns cast long, dancing shadows on the walls. Men worked with their hands, their movements slow and deliberate, a craft passed down through generations. In 1889, Fusajiro Yamauchi opened his small shop. He called it Nintendo Koppai. The name itself is a mystery, often translated as "leave luck to heaven." It was a fitting name for a business built on games of chance. Yamauchi was not an inventor, he was a craftsman. He saw a market for high-quality Hanafuda cards. They had recently been legalized. His cards were made from the bark of mulberry trees, pasted together in layers, then painted with intricate designs. Each deck was a small treasure. Each card was a testament to the skill of the hands that made it. The work was slow, it was methodical. The shop was a quiet place. The only sounds were the slicing of paper. The only sounds were the gentle brushing of ink. The only sounds were the low murmur of the workers. They sat on tatami mats, hunched over low tables. Light from the paper-screened windows fell across their work. They were not just employees, they were artisans. They were not making worlds of wonder. They were not building castles in the clouds. They were making playing cards. Small, beautiful things called Hanafuda. Each card was a piece of art, a tiny painting of a flower, a bird, a sliver of the moon. The work was precise, the cuts were clean, the colors were mixed by hand. This was a business of patience, it was a business of quiet dedication. The men who made these cards did not dream of global empires, they dreamed of a steady hand and a perfect line. They were artisans in a world that was beginning to forget them. This was the first secret of Nintendo. It was not born from a desire to conquer. It was born from a need to create. It was a company rooted in the tangible world, in the feel of thick paper between your fingers, in the satisfaction of a game played across a small wooden table. The sounds were not electronic beeps and boops. They were the soft shuffle of cards, the quiet talk between friends, the clink of cups in the dim light. This was a world away from the one we know now, a world of slow time and careful choices. The mystery of Nintendo is not in what they built later. It is in what they were before. It is in how a company that made simple playing cards for gamblers and families could survive for over a century. How it could weather wars, recessions, the complete transformation of society. The answer lies in the shadows of that old Kyoto shop. It lies in the discipline of the craftsman. It lies in the quiet understanding that what you make is less important than how you make it. And that some games are played over a very, very long time. That was the beginning. But the world outside was changing. New technologies were rising like a tidal wave. The quiet, careful world of the card maker was about to be washed away, forcing the company to learn a new and painful game, the game of survival. The post-war years were a time of great upheaval in Japan. The old ways were fading. The future was a chaotic landscape, new ideas, new technologies. Nintendo, under Hiroshi Yamauchi, knew that playing cards would not be enough. The company needed to change, or it would die. And so began a long, dark period of desperate experiments. A series of failures brought them to the very edge of collapse. These were the years Nintendo does not like to talk about. The lights in the boardroom were dim, the faces were grim. They tried to be everything to everyone. They started a taxi company, the Daiya taxi service. It failed. They entered the food industry, launched instant rice. It was a disaster. They opened a chain of love hotels rooms, rented by the hour. That venture faltered, an uncomfortable footnote. Each failure was a blow. Each closed door was a reminder the world was harsh and unforgiving. The company was losing money. It was losing its identity. The craftsman's quiet confidence gave way to a gambler's loud desperation. The card factories were repurposed, then fell silent. Machines gathered dust. Workers used to paper and ink were now asked to build things they did not understand. Morale was low. The future looked bleak. Hiroshi Yamauchi, stern and demanding, pushed the company relentlessly, searching for a single hit, a single idea that would save them. He invested in toys, cheap plastic copies of Western board games. He even made a remote-controlled vacuum cleaner. Nothing seemed to stick. The company was adrift, a small boat in a violent storm. Nintendo came perilously close to disappearing. Debts piled up, banks lost patience. Out of the darkness of these failures, a small light appeared. It flickered from the screen of a new kind of machine. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, electronics were beginning to change the world of play. Nintendo had a modest success with a toy called the Ultra Hand, an extending plastic arm, invented by a maintenance engineer named Gunpei Yokoi. This small victory pointed the way. The future was not in instant rice. The future was not in taxis. It was in toys. It was in electronics. It was in finding new ways for people to have fun. The company began making simple electronic toys. They also made light gun games. Then came the arcades. Loud, dark places filled with the electronic symphony of a new generation. Young people flocked to them, feeding coins into glowing boxes that offered simple, addictive challenges. Nintendo saw this new world and cautiously stepped in. They started by importing and distributing arcade games from America. Then they began to make their own. Their early efforts were derivative, simple copies of popular games like Space Invaders. But they were learning. With each new machine, their engineers understood more about circuits, processors, and the magic of moving pixels on a screen. The turning point came from a failed arcade game called Radar Scope. Nintendo had shipped thousands of units to America, but nobody wanted to play it. The company was facing a financial catastrophe. In a moment of desperation, Hiroshi Yamauchi turned to a young, unknown artist on his staff named Shigeru Miyamoto. He was not an engineer, he was a storyteller. He was tasked with creating a new game that could be installed into the unsold Radar Scope cabinets. He was given a simple mandate: make something that Americans would want to play. And so he created a hero. That hero was not a soldier, nor a spaceship. He was a carpenter, a small man in a red cap. He had to rescue his girlfriend from a giant ape who was throwing barrels at him. The game was called Donkey Kong. The hero was initially called Jumpman. He would later be renamed Mario. This one game, born from failure and desperation, changed everything. It was a massive global hit. It showed that games could have characters, they could have stories, and it revealed the genius hiding in plain sight within Nintendo's walls. Just as Nintendo found its footing, the entire video game industry collapsed. By 1983, the American market was a wasteland. It had been flooded with terrible games made by countless companies trying to make a quick buck. Consumers lost faith. Stores refused to stock video games. The word video game became toxic. Atari, the giant of the industry, crumbled into dust. It seemed the fad was over. Most companies fled the market. But Nintendo, forged by failure, saw an opportunity. They had been developing a home console in Japan called the Famicom. It was a huge success there. Bringing it to America was a massive risk. Retailers were terrified. No one wanted to touch another video game console. So Nintendo played a clever trick. They redesigned the machine. They made it look less like a toy and more like a serious piece of home electronics, a grey box that resembled a VCR. They didn't call it a video game console, they called it the Nintendo Entertainment System, an NES. It came with a robotic toy called ROB to further disguise its true nature as a gateway to games. The launch of the NES in America was a slow, careful gamble. They tested it in New York in 1985, guaranteeing stores that they would buy back any unsold inventory. It was a promise that showed their confidence. And slowly word began to spread. The games were different. They weren't the buggy, flickering messes that had killed Atari. They were polished. They were fun. Games like Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, they were deep, challenging, full of secrets. Families began to open the boxes. Living rooms were filled with the iconic music and sounds of a new era of play. The NES didn't just sell well, it revived an entire industry from the dead. It established Nintendo as the undisputed king of video games. The company did this by enforcing strict control. They had a seal of quality, a promise that any game with their name on it would work. They limited the number of games third-party publishers could release, ensuring the market wouldn't be flooded with junk again. This discipline, born from their own past failures and the ashes of Atari, created a foundation of trust with players. The success of the NES was not an endpoint, it was a beginning. Nintendo proved they could conquer the living room. Next, they set their sights on the world outside. Gunpei Yokoi, the same engineer who had created the Ultra Hand decades earlier, had an idea. He observed a man on a train playing with a calculator and imagined a portable gaming device. This led to the Game Boy in 1989. It had a blurry green and black screen. It was far less powerful than its competitors. But it was cheap. It was durable. Its batteries lasted forever. It was a perfect piece of Nintendo design. The Game Boy's true power, however, came from a single game, Tetris. This simple, elegant puzzle game was the perfect companion for the portable device. But it was another creation that would turn the Game Boy into a global phenomenon. A young developer named Satoshi Tajiri had an idea for a game based on his childhood hobby of insect collecting. He imagined a world where players could capture, train, and trade creatures with their friends using the Game Boy's link cable. The game was Pokémon. It was more than a game. It was a social event. It created a worldwide craze as kids everywhere dedicated themselves to the mantra, "Gotta catch 'em all." The Nintendo Wii, released in 2006, was a revolution. Its motion-sensing controller brought video games to people who had never played before. Nintendo wasn't competing for the same players. They were creating new ones. Then came the Nintendo Switch. How did a company with such a volatile history become so consistently successful? The answer lies in a hidden strategy, a corporate philosophy that runs counter to almost every modern business trend. It is the strategy of silence. Nintendo does not move fast and break things. It moves slowly, it moves deliberately, it guards its secrets with a discipline that borders on paranoia. Other companies announce projects years in advance. They feed a constant stream of information to the public. Nintendo works behind a thick veil of secrecy. The world often knows nothing about its next major project until just before it is ready. This silence serves multiple purposes. It creates a powerful sense of mystery and anticipation among fans. A Nintendo Direct presentation becomes a major event. No one knows what secrets it will reveal. This quiet approach gives the company room to maneuver. It allows their designers, like Shigeru Miyamoto, the freedom to experiment, to fail, to start over in private. The story of Nintendo is far from over. Today, the company is expanding its universe beyond the screen. It is returning, in a way, to the physical world. An animated movie starring the plumber became a global box office sensation, proving these characters have a life far beyond the games that birthed them. Yet, even as it expands, the core of the company remains the same. The focus is still on play. The next console is being developed in those same secret labs, behind those same closed doors. The future is not about more powerful processors or more realistic graphics. It is about a new idea. From the hands that painted Hanafuda cards in 1889 to the hands that will unbox a new console in the years to come, that connection remains the company's true purpose. Nintendo played a long game. The long game goes on. Nintendo was never just a gaming company. It was a long game. And the world is still playing.